So let's go ahead and install the clamp assembly to the top limb. This is a split limb bow. Obviously, if you had a solid limb bow, you would mount this in the lowest part of the V of the limb. But you always want to make sure the pads are in the right place. You line up the clamps, and you snug the clamps down. Always make sure that you have enough clearance between the cam and the clamp assembly. Usually I would take the bow out and pull it back to make sure I didn't have any interference before I made the final position for mounting the clamp. But in this case, we'll assume we've done that and it's in the final position. So next what we're going to do is pull on this a little bit, make sure we got all the kinks out of the string, make sure it's tight, and we're going to wrap it around the high surface area 8/32 panhead screw that we have right here on the lever arm. Now there's two ways you can mount that. You can mount it around the inside, as I've shown here, or I can mount it on the outside. I don't know if you can see that right there. So why the difference, or why the option? If you have in this particular case, this is a bow that has a lot of limb activity or travel. In that case, we can't afford to put it on the outer position, because what that means is this lever has to travel further. For bows that have limbs that don't travel as much, many parallel limbs that are on bows like the Elite bows as an example, their limbs don't travel as far on the shot. So for those kinds of bows, I like to mount it on the inner position, as you see here. So while I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and mount it to the inner position on this screw. And what we're going to do is pull on the loose end here until the rest comes all the way down. And then what we're going to do, if you look at the dampening coil, is we're going to make sure we give it a little preload right there. I don't know if you can see that. The preload ensures that the rest works every time the same time, and that the launcher is in its final down configuration. So let's go ahead and just tighten this guy up. And you can tighten that pretty darn tight, and your bow's ready to shoot, literally. But one thing we've added to the lever arm here is a secondary feature for peace of mind more than anything else. And you can go through this back hole and you can see how it wraps on top. Then we have this little set screw that you can go ahead and snug that guy up. In the event if any of these screws come loose, which hasn't happened to me or any of our shooters yet, it's nice to know you have a secondary backup. I want to also take the time right now to show you what's a great repeatable feature of the VersaRest, and that's 8-position shaft right here. If I ever had to make any adjustments to this, or I just wanted to take the spring tension or those kinds of things, what's cool, I can just undo this 830 or this 440 screw right here, put a little pressure on the rest right there, pull this guy off, and there you go. You think, oh my gosh, maybe now what do I do? My center shot's off, or the action of the system and the buffering spring is all changed now. What's great about the VersaRest is you can push it back down, put this guy in exactly the same position, and I literally can shoot it and not have any arrow impact change at all. I don't know any rest that'll allow you to do that. Just tighten this back down. It is important though to make sure you know where your left and right position is on this lever arm before you do that. So the next thing we do is I like to cut this cord off with leave a little extra. We're going to go ahead and burn this guy with a lighter. And then I tie it off just because I know I might have to make a few adjustments when I go to shoot the bow. I always like to leave a little extra there. I will trim this even shorter when I get done with my final tune of the bow and make sure everything is hitting exactly where I expect it to and want it to. But now what I'm able to do now is go ahead and shoot a few arrows through it. So let's go check that out. Okay, so I've got the rest mounted, I got my center shot adjusted. This is, we're going to see how it paper tunes. I'm not kidding, folks. You can't script this stuff. That was an eyeball paper tune, first time shot out of the Versa that I just set up, that you saw me set up, and that is a near perfect bullet hole. Can't get any better than that. So we just got done shooting one arrow out of this bow. I just set it up, and that was, in my opinion, pretty impressive to have a near bullet hole in the first time you shot an arrow through this rest. I was pretty pleased with that, I can tell you. And that's not the first time I've heard of that happening. We've had a lot of folks call and write in and tell us how it's basically eliminated a lot of their tune problems and how easy it was to set up. Some closing comments I want to make is we also include this little bit longer 8/32 screw, and I think I mentioned earlier that this is to accommodate a thicker limb on some of the bows that are out there right now. So this is one of the parts that might remain out of that package of accessories that I showed you earlier. And once you have your Versa rest set up in the limb actuated configuration, you'll see that you'll have these set of parts left over, and they should be left over. The only two parts that you might use in final configuration is either the arrow trough or the arrow claw. If you so desire, you put it in the front of the bow riser. In this case, the rear arrow guide was plenty for what we needed here to guide the arrow into the Accu launcher area as we came to full draw. So now that we had this set up for the top limb, let me show you how to configure it for the bottom limb.